Hey there, welcome to Hobie on YouTube. Thanks for joining me. I thought I would wrap up my series on unofficial scout knives by featuring three at one time. The three knives there on the table are pretty similar, it should be easy to do. They're all from the 1920s. They're all pretty tough names to get from cutlers that I can't really get a lot of information on, and coincidentally they all begin with the letter C. So let me move unofficial scout out of the way here so we can keep our focus both visually and mentally. And the first one that I have to show you is from Challenge Cutlery Company. Now, Goins' Encyclopedia of Cutlery Markings has a pretty good rundown on the history of this company. I don't want to go into all that. Let me just tell you, Levine's Guide to Knives has two entries. One reads Challenge Cutlery Company, Weebush, or Wybush, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, Weebush and Hilger, owners, Sheffield or New York City, importer of English and German knives, 1867 to 1914. And then the second entry is Challenge Cutlery Company, Weebush and Hilger, Bridgeport, Connecticut, U.S. made, 1891 to 1928. So Challenge operated in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and apparently was an importer of German and English knives for a while, but in 1891 they started making knives here in the U.S. and they did up until 1928 when they closed, I've read, due to the death of the owner Charles Wybush. But interesting to note, when they did close, the knife making equipment and machinery was acquired by the newly formed George Schrade Cutlery Company of Bridgeport, Connecticut. So that's interesting. And a lot of these old knife companies are intertwined. Their histories are intertwined. But this is just a beautiful old knife. They just don't make them like this anymore. You know, it's your standard scout utility knife, 3 5/8 inches, 4 blades, nickel silver, brass, carbon steel. But they're just made so nicely. It says Scout here on the shield. Brass pins. Get a load of this blade. They were hand forged, you know, and they're just thick. And they had these beautiful swedges and long nail pulls. Here's the tang stamp. Challenge Cutlery Company, and Challenge is in an arch there at the top. The screwdriver cap lifter on this one is more narrow than a lot of them from this time period. It's got a really broad mouth to pop caps, so I'm sure it works really well. And it has that old style can opener, and this one's got a vertical pull on it. And it's got a cutout here in the scale so it can go down in there, but it's flush and you can't really get it with your nail. It's weird. You have to use the edge of your nail and to get it. So that's kind of interesting. There it is. Big and beefy and just as sharp as the day it was made. And then here's the awl. It does have a cutout here for your excuse me, your nail to get in there, get under that lip. And the interesting thing about that awl is that it still has the bluing on it. Very cool. So the main tang stamp on the main blade is the only marking on that knife. That's Challenge Cutlery Company. This next knife I have to show you is a Crucible Knife Company knife. And according to Levine's Guide, Crucible Knife Company was sold by the retailer W.T. Grant of New York City between 1921 and 1932. According to Goins, Crucible Knife Company of New York was a trademark used by W.T. Grant from 1926 to 1929. So a little different on the dates there, but basically the 1920s. And I'm old enough to remember W.T. Grant. I remember Grant's City. I remember they had one in a strip shopping mall up the road from me. I used to hitchhike up there when I was a little kid and spend my lawn mowing money. I think that's where I bought my first real knife. I think I bought, of course, it was a $1.10, right? I think I bought it there at their sporting goods counter. But they went bankrupt, and I remember at the time it was the largest bankruptcy in the history of the United States. W.T. Grant's. So this knife is very similar to the Challenge Cutlery Company knife I just showed you. It's so similar that for a while there I thought maybe it was made by Challenge. But I actually think it might be made by Utica or someone else like that. Let's just look at the main blade first. Exactly kind of the same thing, you know, long nail pull, thick blade, swedged. But that's not uncommon on these older knives. Challenge wasn't the only company that did that. This tag stamp on this one is really hard to read, and it is only stamped on the main blade. It just simply reads Crucible Knife at the top there in an arc, and then New York underneath it. It has what to me looks like the very same screwdriver cap lifter. And it has a pretty similar awl. This one seems to have a little bit of like a pebbled surface on the inside, or just a kind of an unfinished surface. But the big difference is in the can opener. And this is a style of can opener that is usually associated with Utica. So yeah, you know, neither Levine's or Goins really knows who made this knife, but it was sold by W.T. Grant under their house brand name, Crucible Knife Company of New York. Really cool. This last knife is probably the rarest of them all, and it is a Crown Cutlery Company knife. Crown Cutlery Company of New York. And Levine's guide, again, has two entries. The first reads, location, New York, New York, made in Germany, Austria, type of firm, wholesale importer, and dates 1910s to 1920s. And then the second entry is, location, New York, New York, made in USA, type of firm, wholesaler, dates circa 1916 to 1919. And then it goes on to say, made in USA during World War I. So Crown Cutlery was an importer in New York, for, importing knives from Germany and Austria until World War I, when they couldn't do that anymore, and they made knives here in the U.S. for only, according to Levine's, 4 short years. Now, Goins also has an entry. Goins doesn't know much about this company. It says Crown Cutlery Company, New York, and then guesstimate on the date range 1900 to 1930. So they don't know squat about it. But this is a cool knife. Again, very similar to the others. It does have a thinner blade that's not as heavily swedged, and it has a crescent nail pull. The stamp is not all that easy to read on the main blade, but it's easier on the others, and every single tool and blade on this knife is stamped. But it reads Crown Cutlery Co., again in an arc on the top, and then New York underneath it, spelled out. This is a nail buster, so let me get my little tool here. Snap. Here you can see that marking again. And same situation with the old style can opener. It's got a lift tab that you can't hardly get to. You gotta really pick at it. And that one seems to have a little different shape, doesn't it? There's our stamp again. And then the awl. And it's stamped as well. And I noticed one thing interesting about this awl, and that is it kind of has a match strike, but it's weird. It's under the lip where you don't need it anyway. I mean, you sure don't. It doesn't help you grip anything, and I'm not really sure you could strike a match on that. Maybe you could. Maybe originally it was a little longer or something. Maybe put your match head down in the groove there and do that. See it? Interesting. So that's a look at 3 really hard to get scout knives from the 1920s. A challenge, a crucible, and a crown. Thanks for watching, and have fun collecting.